yourself, and kind of talk a little bit, let JR talk a little bit about Teach As You Learn in general, but we're gonna go ahead and get started. So I'm Juliana. I'm a first year med student at Tufts up in Boston. I went to Wesleyan University for undergrad, and I took 2 gap years to do AmeriCorps and to just kind of take a break, travel a little bit, and enjoy my summer before med school started. So happy to have you all here, and I'll let the rest of the team introduce themselves.
Hi guys, so I'm Amoy. I am in the Caribbean. So I'm kind of doing a non-traditional route, but still in the MD1 program. So I started pre-med online. I did it in the Caribbean for my transitional term, and then I transitioned to a different Caribbean school for my MD. So initially I kind of thought like, oh, I can go to school and have a vacation. That didn't happen exactly the way that I expected it to, but it was great nonetheless. My experience is a little bit different because in the Caribbean, you don't have to take the MCAT. So I will not be answering the MCAT questions, but I'll answer all the other ones. So I'm excited for the event, and we are going to get to all of your questions, and feel free to like put anything in the chat, and we'll be reading it throughout the time. We may not answer like as soon as you put it, but we're definitely going to get to the questions in the chat if you don't want to speak out. And it'll be fun.
Hey guys, I'm Alex, and I'm on at MCW. Originally went to undergrad at Davidson College back in North Carolina, then did a gap 3 years doing some clinical ortho research at Emory in Atlanta, and then originally from New Jersey though, and then moved up here to Milwaukee campus for school.
Hi guys, my name is Abraham. I'm a first year DO student at the College of Osteopathic Medicine here in Los Angeles. So I went to UCLA, and I went to UCLA for undergrad, 2 years to work frontline during the height of LA's COVID pandemic. So, and then from there, I've been working with UCLA 1 to mentor pre-meds. I did some MCAT tutoring here and there as well. So I'm just really glad to be part of this curriculum team. And then and next is the man, the myth, the legend, JR.
You can't throw me in like that. The real legends, this curriculum team, they're a team of all-stars from all different walks, doing all different kind of aspects of the medical school journey. So they're really going to be able to, throughout the year, put together some amazing events for you guys. And they're going to kind of be the go-to people. If you guys want events, let's have a full thing on DO schools, because there's a lot of people interested in that, or the Caribbean, or, whatever. We can do all of those things. And that's why we have this kind of diverse curriculum team that we have. So super props to you guys, and props for getting this going today. I'm JR. I'm a 3rd year medical student now at Mayo in Rochester. Went to undergrad at Duke. I'm rocking my Duke stuff right now. Oh, Rachel, I know. I was expecting you to be here, so I kind of I was like, I have to set the tone here. But and mentorship is just huge for me. And so the reason why I started this Teach As You Learn, which is kind of like piggybacking off of something I've done in the past, but was because as a pre-med, I didn't have any mentorship, especially from medical students. And I think that the best mentors are the people who are just one step ahead. You can have mentors that are like doctors and stuff, but at least if I'm being honest, when I would do that, it was just so that these people could either write me letters of recommendation or connect me with something, but it wasn't somebody who I could be like, yo, do I really have to take this class? Or yo, is 504 on the MCAT plus all the other stuff, am I straight? That wasn't that kind of relationship. And so I wanted to be able to create an environment where you can have a ton of those relationships with medical students who want to be able to be there for you and play that role, because a lot of us as medical students didn't have that. And I think it's a gap that needs to be bridged. So that's really where Teach As You Learn kind of came, because as medical students, we're still learning. And, you know, as a third year, I wanted to be able to be there for the rest of the curriculum team who are in their first year, as well as you guys, and then they can be there for you guys, and we kind of just grow as we all grow, just kind of all, I guess, yeah, teaching and learning together kind of thing. And so with that, there's going to be a lot of opportunities to do things like this, events put on based on different kind of topics and whatever else the curriculum team has planned for you guys, that you can just come and learn and ask questions so that you're not kind of the typical confused pre-med feeling like you're going through it by yourself. The Slack channel is going to be kind of this 24/7 access to getting questions answered. And one thing that I've realized from something we did, like the Evolve Your Application kind of thing, the Slack channel, usually when people ask a question, even if you don't have a question, definitely tune into those, because it may trigger something for you and you're like, oh, I didn't even know this, and now I'm aware of something. So that'll be there. When application season comes back around, particularly for the people who are going to be entering that kind of stage of the application cycle, we will have a lot of resources for that. We'll have, like, you know, personal statement reviews, mock interviews, you know, one-on-one meetings to go over your application, talk about what schools are appropriate to apply to. And you have so many people at different schools, so you can have like easy access to, like, you know, what is the school really talking about? Do I really fit here? All of those kind of things, you'll have access to those through the line. I'm currently working on the website that will house all of these things, so you'll be able to kind of, like, you know, schedule these MCAT tutoring or schedule a one-on-one personal statement review, kind of all that stuff soon, hopefully. But it's basically just going to be hopefully all the resources that you need in a very, like, low stress, not from like a corporate BMO or Princeton review or, you know, whatever, that's just going to like charge crazy amounts of money. And it's kind of like this corporate kind of feel. And it's just like, yeah, this is just, you know, we're all medical students who are here serving as the mentors, and you guys are all pre-medical students, and we're just here to help each other and grow and make sure that we all get to where we want to be. So this will continue to evolve as we kind of go. There'll be little changes, things will get added. Feedback is always appreciated. But yeah, if any other questions to come up with that, let me know here, let me know on the Slack, DMs. Also, this is also a way for you to be able to find like your own mentors. So like you can come to these events, you can really resonate with somebody, and then you can DM Slack, and then you can get each other's numbers or whatever. You can grow those relationships too. So you can do that with me too. So, and Madison really runs everything. She's here. She tries to stay behind the scenes. I don't let her because she like keeps everything in check, and I can't do anything without Madison. So yeah, I think that's Teach As You Learn. And I'm excited to hear any questions that we have. I won't be able to be on as long as everybody else, but I'm here for at least the beginning to answer any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, JR. I just want to say I did evolve your application last year with JR, and there's just nothing as valuable as getting to hear from current students. I think that's something that's hard to find access to. So I'm really excited to kind of be a mentor and to be able to answer any questions that people have, because I know the whole pre-med and application process and everything can be so convoluted, and it's kind of hard to figure out what you need to be doing and when, and it's just, there's a lot going on. So I totally understand that, and we want to be able to be a resource for all of you. So happy to be here. But we can go ahead and start. I know some of you might have submitted some questions to our Google form, so we're going to start just answering some of those and kind of go through those. And if anyone has any questions at any point, please feel free to interrupt. You can unmute, you can put it in the chat, whatever works for you. So we'll go ahead and get started with some of those. I know that some people ask some questions that I think JR might be able to answer, so we want to ask them while he's still on. I know that someone had asked about being a parent and going through this process. So I don't know if JR, you want to kind of speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I think honestly, well, being a parent, specifically being a parent, Kari, my son, serves as a huge like motivating like source of motivation for me. So it actually really spurs me to do some of the things like studying and things like that. The challenges I think of being a parent is when you get to medical school and even pre-med, like your time oftentimes isn't your own. So you can't really determine, you know, if your kid's bedtime is 7 p.m. And for example, I was in my surgery clerkship the last block, and there'd be times when I'd get home after 7 p.m. and I would leave like before my son woke up. So like I didn't see my son that day, you know, and it's just like my day's not my own. And sometimes that can be draining. And so the idea of like time not being your own, not having control of your time is tough. But with support, like I have an amazing, you know, wife who takes care of everything, Kari and me. So like the support is huge. And then also, yeah, like I said at the beginning, like I think if you find the things that serve as a source of motivation for you, then it kind of turns you into like the superhero student. And like I have like this little picture sitting on my desk right now of like I just have to have this on my desk because it like keeps me, you know, in that kind of state. And so children, obviously I'm biased because I have one, I think, of the best things to do that. And it gives me kind of he inspires me. But yeah, I think starting medical school, all of those kind of things with a family is very possible. Madison and I have been married for over 4 years now. She came in with me in med school. So I know this is touching on a different aspect, not just children, but, you know, significant others, all of those things, very possible. And honestly, I think that I think it makes it more smooth than kind of, you know, and I know most people don't have that life, so I'm biased, but that's my 2 cents on it, at least. Do you have 2 cents on
Oh my,
maybe what a
putting me on the
significant
spot.
other? I told you just like
Just expect that like JR said with time, he has no control over it. But when he is home, he makes the most of it. So he gets up before we're up and he studies and eats the frog right away in the morning. So there's just different ways to prioritize studying. That way you can have time for family or other things that you enjoy. So it's definitely possible. And it's good to have balance too. So you're not just studying all the time.
Awesome, thank you. I think I'm not personally a parent, but I know that there are people in my class who have kids who are married. Most of my class has a significant other. There's like a group for significant others of students. So there's definitely a lot of support and it can be done. It's definitely doable. So for anybody who is in that situation, I think it, you know, you're a medical student, but you're also a lot of other things. And I think it's important, no matter what your situation is, to be able to balance who you are outside of school with the academics. So it's definitely possible. We also had some questions about research. So if anyone else on the curriculum team wants to kind of talk about any research experience they might have had or kind of what they did as a pre-med in terms of research.
Guess I can tackle this kind of, I don't know exactly what they're looking for from this answer, but I mean, I think research, it's kind of important nowadays to some extent, especially like for later on. But I did some in undergrad. I think undergrads usually have a varying amount of opportunities. You just kind of have to seek them out. And then I did a lot of research in my gap. It was something I kind of sought out. I knew I wanted to do that in my gap. I wanted to kind of make some money, take some time off, and also travel. Research allowed me to do that with presenting at conferences and things like that. I think it's helpful. I think it allows you, like, especially if you're like leaning towards a specialty or things like that, it allows you like experience in it, allows you to see different things. Like my experience was pretty cool because I got to hang out in the OR like for most of my time. So I wasn't just doing research. I was basically like hang out in the OR, figuring out, like, if you've never been in an OR, it's a different atmosphere. It's a different beast. So just kind of figuring out how to kind of navigate some of that stuff. But I would say overall, like, can be a great experience. I think, as anybody would say, it's all about who your mentor is. So I think making sure that you pick a great mentor, especially in research, because that kind of shapes your whole experience. And that'll kind of shape where you decide to go with that future in your career.
And kind of to add to that, I mean, especially with step one now going past fail, research has become a really big component for your application coming into residency, coming into just getting more opportunities. Because yeah, for my experience, and during my gap year, I was also, while I was working, I also was I was scribing for a position working with patients, but also I was doing clinical research with the doctor I was working with. And I cannot thank him enough, because he was not only getting me involved with the clinical research, working with different pharma companies, but also he was getting me onto different publications and stuff. So it very much comes down to who your mentor is, seeing how receptive they are, because here's the thing, time's a currency in medical school. You don't want to waste it not finding results. I mean, yes, there's a lot of skills that you should be able to build as a research. Like currently I am, because of my work and during my gap year, I actually got a position recently with my faculty mentor at his lab. And even though it's a wet lab, I'm learning these skills, but then he's also telling me, it's like, okay, you can start writing, you can start doing other things. So you need to find a mentor that treats you as equally as you treat them. You at the end of the day, you're a colleague at the school. You're not just an inferior. And so you want to be position yourself like that at the school. You don't want to make sure that you're putting yourself at your best foot, because you're the only person that can do that for yourself. And so that's the thing with research. You got to put your best foot forward, and you're the only one to do that. So that's my 2 cents on that.
So I want to share a little bit about my research experience. I did a lot of research in undergrad before I got to the pre-med program. So I was a psych major and we had to do a lot of research. So I really liked conducting the studies. Pretty much we would just sign up for them. So you could either be the person that does the research, or you could be one of the participants. And I'm sure like if your school has some form of research committee, they're always looking for more responses to surveys and stuff like that. So you can just reach out to them and be like, hey, I'm interested in research. Is there a study going on right now, and get some more information. That was my undergrad experience. Pre-med, I did not do a lot of research, if I'm being honest, but in the MD program, I'm MD1 and we have an entire research class, like we've had to take a midterm on it. So research is going to be really important. So if you start learning about how to conduct research now, it will be helpful once you start your MD classes, and research is going to be mandatory at that point.
I'll add one quick thing too. I'm on the admission committee here, and so I see what we really value. And I'm only speaking for my school, but I assume that it's across the board. But people who do commit themselves to finding research as a pre-med student, we don't only like it because it's like it shows that you're actually contributing to the field of medicine, and you're doing research, which is like a sciencey medical school kind of thing to do. But it's like not easy to find like research opportunities as a pre-medical student. And so to like get into those is like showing me, as I'm reading through somebody's application, like you went out of your way to really, you probably sent 20 emails, got 19 no's, and you got 1 yes kind of thing, because it's not easy to get research. So for the people who are trying to get research in pre-med and you're hitting roadblocks and walls, like keep fighting through that, because you're going to get the payoff, like, that the other people talked about, like the pubs and all the other stuff, but then it'll actually look good. There was somebody sent me a message to in the chat, just a direct message, asking about let me see, how important medical school prestige is for getting into residencies, especially, I think, like what we mentioned with step 1 going past fail. Is it okay if I tackle that really quick? So yeah, that's a great question too. I think it really depends on a few things. Specialty is going to be one. Certain specialties are kind of play a very traditional way of going about things, where the bigger names, allow them to, they just can kind of weed out based on that, which I don't think is necessarily the most appropriate way to go about that. But what I have heard with step 1 going past fail is that it is transitioning residencies from a mode of the prestige and standardized tests to more of a holistic, how can this person do in the clinic? And so things that now are being prioritized are going to be your clerkship grades. Step 2 is also, even though again, standardized tests aren't supposed to be prioritized, some will still use that. But clerkship grades and letters of recommendation are the 2 things that are more of a indicator of how you actually operate as a physician. And so those things are what residency programs are supposed to be valuing now, more so than the things like what med school did you go to and what's your standardized scores. So we're in a phase where we'll see how residency programs really do with that. But and when people are applying to medical schools and in between choices and things like that too, we can always talk about that.
I kind of want to touch on that as to, like, from the osteopathic standpoint, because people will say DO, it's like, what's the difference in prestige with DO and MD? And sorry, I went off on, I turned off my video because as I was talking about research, my faculty mentor literally was saying hi to me as I was talking. So so to answer the question, there is something where it's like, so currently where you have to also look at, okay, where do you want to work? Where, at what locations do you want to work? So for me, it's like, I have family in LA and I've always born, raised Angelino, and I kind of see myself working here. So choosing an option of a school that's nearby where they can get me great matches to school, to rotation programs around the area, that's something to also keep in mind too, especially when you're thinking about a location. It's not like just about the prestige of the school. It's, do you see yourself matching in programs nearby? Because you'll be rotating at locations and you're saying, is this where I could see myself work? Is there something where I could maybe grow? So now we're getting into a point where it's not just about trying to get into a school like it was in undergrad and just hoping for the best education possible. It's now you're starting to think about your life, your career. If you have a family, if you have a significant other, or like other conditions that keep you in a certain location, you have to start thinking, what's the best option for me? And so from an osteopathic point of view, I kind of chose to come here because I want to work in LA, and my rotations are giving me the programs that I want to match into, or like residencies nearby me where I want to work. So if you're going to go somewhere out, like I've had some options up in the East Coast, but I was just like, I would have to come back to do auditions here in LA. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of money to think about. So that's where like the location does matter when it comes to the decision of getting into a school, especially now, step 1, and that prestige isn't, as JR was saying, it's becoming more holistic. So who you know, where you know, is going to be where you want to work and where you're going to see yourself in 5-10 years.
Yeah, I think I just want to touch on like the research thing, but it kind of ties into the prestige and everything as well. There are a lot of things that you might want to do like to further your career and everything, but I think you also have to consider like the real life and like personal life factors as well, kind of like Abraham was just saying about location and everything. And in terms of research, for me, I don't love research. It's not really my thing. And I was like, I could do like a clinical research position or something like that in my gap years, but I realized like that's just not something that I really enjoy that much. So I think you also have to consider like what parts of medicine do you actually enjoy the most, and what do you want to focus on? And you don't want to just do things to check off boxes or because you think it'll look impressive. And I think there are a lot of ways that you can tailor your application and your resume to medical schools that will still look impressive, and it's things that you're passionate about without it seeming like the cookie cutter, like I have all these publications and all these checkbox things. Like I chose to do AmeriCorps and spend a year doing service because that's something that I'm passionate about, and I wanted to move to a different place and just get to experience life in a different part of the country because that's something that I value. And I'm so glad that I did that because it was such a great experience. So I think you have to consider, yes, there are things you're going to have to do to further your career, but you should also try to pick things that you actually enjoy and are passionate about, because even in your interviews and things, that's going to come across if you're just doing something because you think it is what you're supposed to be doing. So keep that in mind as well as you kind of go through this process. With that, I think we can kind of if everyone wants to talk about like what they did, if they took gap years, and what they did during those gap years, just to kind of give some like examples. Everybody's gonna have different interests and different preferences, but I think it's helpful to just kind of see some different perspectives. So if you guys want to kind of go around and do that.
Sure. So I'll share my gap year experience because I think it was a little bit unique. I had planned one gap year. So I graduated in December of 2018 from Nova, and that was my undergraduate. And so I had planned that I was going to take a gap year from December 2018 to December 2019, and then start in January of 2020. We all know what happened in 2020. So my gap year was actually 2.5 years of gap time. So the first year or so, I kind of was just working like odd end jobs. I was a nanny for 8 years. I had a nannying agency, so I was nannying a lot. I started working in the psychiatric inward unit. I did case management. So I was just working a lot. Like anytime that there was an assignment for me to do, I was doing that. I was saving money, investing. I did not realize how important savings was going to be. So if you are going to take a gap year, I really suggest like having a budget in mind that you want to save and trying to save as much as you can. Because at least in my case, my budget was way underestimated. So I should have budgeted a lot more. And that's one thing that I wish I would have taken advantage of, was the fact that I could have saved more money during that time. But I did a lot of traveling, which was really nice. I love traveling. So I got to travel with my family. I did some independent traveling, and I just rested. And obviously you can't rest today for tomorrow, but it will make a difference when you realize like once you get into your program, you have to be really disciplined, and sleep is something that you are going to sacrifice. So I saved money, I traveled, I rested. I didn't really do any courses to prepare. I know that some people in their gap years would be studying for like MCAT and stuff like that. Like I mentioned, since my school does not require the MCAT, I didn't have to study for it. So that was nice. So that was really my gap year experience, gap 2 years, but yeah, that was my experience.
I took 2 years off too. I did research during this kind of like part-time, doing orthopedic research, mostly because I just knew that was what I was interested in. And then I also was a track and field coach and a basketball coach with Madison at a high school that we were close to. And that's honestly what I spent the majority of my time doing, was like coaching. And so I think that's all just to say, like, if you are taking gap year, do something that is like progressing your pre-med career forward. It doesn't have to be research, like Juliana said. If you're not interested in research, don't force research. Do community service, you can scribe, you can do a lot of things. So I would pick something, because if I do, again, and I'm going to try to give you guys like as many things coming from like an admission committee, like reading things, because I think that's like valuable for you guys. But if I do see somebody who has, and the other people on the admission committee team, like we talk about, if somebody didn't do something like for an entire year that they took off, it is a little concerning, that like they just didn't, they spent a year not doing anything, because you just don't know how they'll come into medical school. That being said, take your time to rest, like Amoy said as well, but do something. Like I did a part-time. I was doing research probably like 3 hours 5 days a week, like 3 hours a day, like for five days a week, because it was virtual, which was nice. I didn't have to go in, so I could pretend I was doing it longer, but I wasn't. And then do something else that like you enjoy doing, like for me, it was coaching, it was doing that kind of thing. And it was still something that I could put on my, resume as an experience. I was coaching. So those are my recommendations. And that's what I did for that 2 years.
Yeah, and I did something exactly similar to JR. So I did some clinical orthopedic research. I was technically full-time, but clinical orthopedic research, the hours kind of vary, especially like I was going to see cool cases, to be honest. I knew what I wanted out of my experience. I wanted to be able to kind of, I knew I was leaning ortho, so I was like, hey, if I can go in the OR and hang out and kind of see some cool things, then yeah, I would love to. And so my mentors, I mean, we kind of discussed before I took the role. And just to touch on what Molly was talking about, like budgeting is huge. Like, I mean, I took a position, like there's a lot of the pre-med labor sometimes can be very, very cheap pay. I will say that. Like sometimes you're making like $10 an hour, which isn't reasonable to be living off of by yourself. So be mindful of that. I was able to kind of negotiate somewhere upwards of, I mean, on a livable salary. And so knew I wanted to buy a home in the 3-year gap that it was supposed to be 2, but it ended up being 3. I knew I wanted to buy a house before I left Atlanta. So I was able to do that. But you just kind of have to be mindful of those things. And I would definitely say just find something you're passionate about. Because I mean, when I got off of work, I was going to coach youth football. And that was something that was fun. I mean, I was coaching like I think 2 of the attending's children in youth football, which was like extremely fun. It was also fun seeing like people outside of like the medical, like working with their kids and stuff like that. So do something you're passionate about, because to be honest, I think I got asked about me coaching youth football during my interviews. It's something like the things you do during your gap, especially if you're going to take a gap, people are going to ask you about, right? Because they want to know, what have you been doing? Why did you take this gap? Even before I took the gap, I knew I was going to take one. And when I met with, like, through one of my mentors, met with Colorado's dean of diversity, she was like, if I offered you admissions today, would you still take a gap? And I told her yes, just because I knew I needed that time. Like when I said, when school starts, it's a grind. There's no looking back. I mean, I know some people have the opportunity to like kind of finagle like a year off, but a year off in med school means you're like actually working. Like most of the people are doing like gaps research now, and they're grinding. Like I had a coworker that took his 3rd year off for some ortho research, and it was a grind. It was nonstop. It's an interview nonstop. So it's not the same. Your gap does give you some free time, but just be mindful and use it how you want to use it, and use it to make sure that you're doing at least something. Like JR said, I know our admissions committee, they look at that gap and see, hey, are you actually doing something that matters? And something you're passionate about, right? Because they're going to ask you like, why did you do that? And if it was just a checkbox mentality like Juliana, you can tell when somebody's doing something to check a box.
I kind of want to talk about my gap year experience, because I think the good theme today is the checkbox, the no checkbox mentality. Make your own checkbox, because ultimately, like when I was doing my gap years, I was like, it was right in I graduated in 2020 from UCLA, and I was just thinking, okay, I'm in my gap year right now. Am I going to sit around, or do I want to jump into the work that I want to do for the rest of my life? And yes, so I just immediately found a job. And then when I was working full time and doing the research, seeing patients, but at the same time, I was still, one of the things that was asked frequently to me during interviews was me being a musician, and talking about how I worked with, taught students. I was also writing my own music, and it's something where, yes, there's like the things that people want you to see, but at the end of the day, you want to develop the career that you want. And so I was doing music. I was still working with the philanthropy that I want to be a part of. And so you're just kind of creating the toolbox. I think the gap year is one of the best things to do, is start to create the skill set that you want to come into. When you are a doctor, you're going to be like, okay, here's everything I can bring to you or bring forward. Here's any patient I have, any person I work with, I have this toolkit. And the gap year is just the perfect time to sharpen the saw, work, and try to see what you can build off of, because there's not much time in medical school. And yes, there is time to really work and with your skill set, but the gap year is a really great time to not only relax, but also think about what do you want to view out of yourself? What do you want to see coming out 10 years down the line? You're like, okay, here's what I can do. Here's what I've been able to experience and how it's helped me grow as a person. So gap year is a lot about growth, and it does show. The average age of admittance into medical schools is getting higher and higher. Why? Because people are taking gap years. Any person I mentor, I tell them like, yeah, no, you're taking a gap year, not because like, oh, your grades won't be good or your MCATs won't be good. No, it's a growth thing. It's a maturity thing. I definitely see the difference in age and maturity of my classmates when they come right straight out versus the ones that took years, worked in the field, and saw that there was some actual need to be mature. And the maturity is definitely something that you see coming into school. So definitely, like I'm 100. If you asked me my first year of college, like, would you take a gap year? I would say no. But now I'm coming, I'm like, no, 100%. You should take a gap year and make sure you use your gap year well, for not for only for your applications, but also for your own well-being.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm also very pro gap year. I know different things work for different people, and some people going straight through is the best thing for them. But for me, I think having 2 years to just kind of be in the real world and get to, first of all, focus on my application while not being in school was really nice. And just getting to kind of live life and do things that I enjoy was so beneficial. And I definitely felt much more refreshed coming into med school than I would have otherwise. So I highly recommend gap years if you're considering it.
Can I
let's
say,
see.
I'll say one last quick sentence. I know we probably each talk, we like talking, I suppose, but even for people like Rachel, for example, I know that you did your nursing school, right? Is that right? And you have kids and like you have a completely different life. One of my classmates turned 42 this year. But again, going back to the admission committee, we have our own check boxes, and one of our check boxes is road traveled. So like if an applicant has a road traveled kind of story, like they had a different career or they took 5 gap years, or they like, that is actually something that we really, really value. And so it just goes back to what Abe was saying, like the average age is going higher, people are taking gap years. So don't see it as something that's like, oh, I'm taking a gap year, I'm failing because I'm not going straight through or whatever. It is like very, at least here, we really appreciate it. So
Yeah, I just love that you shared that, because my mom is actually a very non-traditional student. She's 53, and we started like the pre-med program together. So yeah, you can take some time off. I mean, she's been a nurse for over 30 years. She's worked in peds, she's worked in all different departments in nursing. So that does help because she's had a lot of hands-on clinical experience, but we are doing it together, and she's 53. So gap years do count, and it makes your story more interesting. You have a lot to share, you have a lot to offer, and like Abraham shared, there's some mature students, and it's helpful, to be around those students because they also have background experience. So going into like the MD program right out of undergraduate is nice if that's what you want to do. But if you decide like, hey, I want to take time off, I want to maybe start a different career, or I have kids, relationships, marriages, things like that, you can always start even if you've taken time off. So that should not discourage you if you take more than a year or two off.
Awesome, thank you. So I know there were a lot of questions about the MCAT, so maybe we can touch on a couple of those. Some people were asking about how to balance studying for the MCAT while also focusing on classes or clinical experience and your other activities. So I'm just going to start off by saying, I think for me, the best thing was to make a schedule before I even touched any material. I know there are some websites where you can kind of like plug in what types of resources you want to use, and it'll give you like a day-to-day schedule. If you say I'm going to study for 3 months for however many hours a week, it'll plan it for you. And you can also obviously do that on your own as well. But I think for me, having it all laid out so that I had a plan to stick to was super beneficial. So I highly recommend that before you start. But if anybody else wants to talk about kind of balancing MCAT studying with other activities.
I mean, I think I'll be quick. I will say schedule truly helps. I will say more than just like creating a schedule, put it on something that you're actually going to follow. I find myself like even throughout med school, like if I don't put something in my Outlook now I don't, like I like will cheat myself and say like, oh, I'll get this done, and I really may or may not get it done. So actually like put in something that you're gonna follow, and it forces you to kind of just be disciplined. So especially doing it while you have something else going on, no matter whether it's school or not, you just need to make a schedule, stick to it, and allow yourself some leeway and be realistic. I think that's the realest thing.
I'm like really big into like evidence-based study stuff because it makes things a lot more efficient. And if you're trying to balance a lot of things that you have going on, like MCAT and courses and all the other things, like you have to do those things efficiently to be able to get them all done. So, you know, for me, the way that I learn best is through like Anki and practice questions. And so, you know, I would utilize practice questions for, you know, when you're setting up your schedule and figure out what works for you that makes things go very efficiently and effectively. And then take actually time, even if it takes time to learn those strategies, like you're going to gain that time back at the tail end. So like actually take time to learn the like efficient study strategies. You can go on YouTube, you know, talk to other people, talk to us in the Slack or whatever, see what works for us. But take time and practice those things, because then you'll be able to develop a really strong study strategy, and then it won't be as hard balancing everything because things kind of move quickly.
And one thing I would like to, sorry, Jay, I was gonna actually push you for your Notion template. That's something I actually use. So JR has a Notion template that really organizes everything really well. So that, and yeah, Anki, the power of Anki, I wasn't a believer until I started using it. And then you somehow just know things. You just know things. You're like, how do I know this? And why do I know this? I guess I don't. I guess I know it. That's basically, yeah. Anyone who's a medical student, they're like, yep, that's basically how Anki works. And one thing I also, for everyone that stayed on, the team actually made a YouTube link to some of JR's like best videos to help you throughout medical. So something that we kind of looked and said, these are some really great videos that helped us, and we want to share with whoever some teachers you learn. So yeah, just popped it into the chat right now.
Yeah, I also, sorry. Go ahead.
Anki was a thing for me that I was like, I cannot get behind Anki. I really liked actually writing flashcards, and I was like, Quizlet is so much better. And then I started using Anki, and I was like, okay, I'm humbled. Anki is a real thing. Download it immediately. I didn't want to. So here's the thing. I didn't necessarily want to make the decks, but I'm like, where am I going to find decks that are already like pre-set up perfectly for my class? There's a lot of students who do use Anki, and they're willing to share the decks with you. So if you can get your hands on Anki decks that are pertaining to like your topics, or you can just search like Anki decks that are already pre-created, they are really, really helpful. That is a major game changer for me. And I actually just started using it within the past like 2 months, and I had it downloaded on my computer for over a year.
Yeah, I also love Anki. I know not everyone in my school uses it now, but it really is like amazing how well it works, and you don't even realize that it's working as you're doing it. And I actually used it for the first time studying for the MCAT, and like it was super helpful for the MCAT itself, but it was also just nice that I already knew how to use it by the time I got to medical school. So I like using it for the MCAT might be a nice way to just kind of see if it's something that works for you and that you like. I know someone asked about like how to learn how to use it. There's definitely a learning curve, and it's not the most user-friendly thing ever. So it might take a minute to kind of figure out the best way for you to use it. But there are like there's this guy Anking who like runs everything Anki related, and like you can find answers to pretty much any Anki related question you could possibly have on his YouTube, and it'll tell you like the best settings to use, what decks to use for all different topics. Like there's a lot of information, but it's super helpful. And I think he also has like a condensed version of like the playlist of like how to use it for like beginners. So I highly recommend that, and we can also like send a link to that at some point. Okay, thank you, Alex. But but yeah, I liked Anki a lot for the MCAT. I use it now every day as best I can. So that's definitely an option. And like JR said earlier, practice questions are the best thing for the MCAT and for med school too. Like a lot of what the MCAT is about is it's not really the content, it's more about understanding what the question's asking you and what the test takers like want to get from you. So kind of figuring out the way that like the test takers, the test makers think is kind of the key to that. And the only way to do that is just to practice the questions and apply that knowledge. So I definitely like, I use UWorld a lot for the MCAT, which unfortunately you have to pay for, but it was my favorite resource for the MCAT. And like, I'm definitely going to use that in med school too. So there are a lot of options out there. I think it's just kind of figuring out what works best for you for the MCAT and for med school. But
This is literally what my computer looks like at all times. UWorld, Notion, and on at all times.
Wait, JR, so you have called Anki, and what was the third one?
Notion.
It's like an organizational kind of tool that it can like have calendars and notes and to-do lists kind of stuff. It's clutch.
Is it an app or it's only a website?
It's an app.
Googling right now.
Yeah,
Or
I'll
YouTube Notion Evolving Medic.
I'll definitely say I didn't believe in Anki from the start, but after watching some videos and realizing like I went through like part of my first block only using it for anatomy and stuff in med school, but it helps with everything. Truly, I don't really like JR has a lot of videos on like passive learning versus active learning, and the high yield stuff. Active learning is way more important. So doing questions and going back to do content review after what you finding those gaps are more important than anything else.
Sorry, I'd just like to add a few pointers on the UWorld. There's a website called Medispora, or I'll try and share the link on Slack. It's literally the same as UWorld, just cheaper. Cheap, actually. Free, actually, now. It's free now. It has the exact same decks, I think, from last year. It covers MCAT and questions for step 1. It's set up exactly the same way. But I'll try and share the link. It's just I don't have the link now. But it's UWorld. Someone made a duplicate for UWorld for broke students. So yeah, I just wanted to add just that. And also on Notion, there's a part where you made a notepad thing where you write like your subjects and stuff. So like instead of just writing like your notes, anything that's just said or you've studied or it's not on the Anki decks or something, you can just make a toggle and have a question thing whereby when you're done with Anki, or I don't know the order in which you study, but you can just like unlock your toggle, read that question. If you don't understand it, maybe write 1. So you revise it the next day. If you're good, 3. So that kind of that spaced repetition type of thing. So I just wanted to add just those 2 things. But yeah, hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Kay. Yes, that is really helpful. If you find it, would you mind putting it in this chat? If not, we'll catch it in the Slack chat, but that's a good thing to use. I've never heard of it, but I'm going to look this up. So it'll be a good resource for me too. And I'm sure the incoming students would really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing.
Definitely. I'll share the link. It's used by a lot. So I'm in China. It's used by a lot of Chinese students. It's an English thing. Don't worry. It's not done here. It's just, it's the exact same thing as UWorld. You just have to sign up with your email and you get started. And sometimes it does keep a track. I think keeping a track of your progress is where the problem is. It's not really like 100, I'd say like a 98. But if you do it consistently, you already know what's happening. But if you take like long gaps, it forgets, it logs you out. It thinks you don't use it anymore. So you have to be like a bit consistent. But it's UWorld-ish. UWorld part 2. UWorld something else. But yeah, I'm looking for it. So I'll share the link here or on Slack or both. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. That sounds like an awesome resource. To kind of switch things over a little bit. There were some questions about like clinical experiences. So maybe we can kind of talk about what we each did, and just to give kind of a brief overview of some of the options. Obviously, clinical experience is really important to kind of show that you know what you're getting yourself into in terms of medicine, and to be able to have experiences to reflect on in your essays and in your interviews and everything, to kind of just kind of demonstrate that like you are committed to medicine and you know what it's like, at least to the extent that you can know what it's like before being in it. So for me, I was a medical assistant part-time for about a year. And I definitely was able to talk about that a lot in my application and in my interviews and everything, but there are tons of different options out there. So if anyone else wants to talk about what they did.
Yeah, sure. So I can share my experience. So I worked in the psychiatric inward unit. I actually worked at the same hospital that my mom was working as a nurse, so that was fun. And I worked there, I would say about 3 days a week. I was per diem. So per diem is kind of like as needed. And like as much as you want to schedule, you were required at least 1 day out of the month. That was the only requirement, but you could schedule yourself for 3 days, for 2 days, 5 days, you know, depending on, and if they need you, they would keep you on schedule. If they didn't need you, they would take you off of schedule. Sometimes they would call you in. So that was like a little bit iffy. If you want something that's going to be more like, if you wanted to do like part-time or full-time, so that you have a consistent schedule, then I would say go for that. But I did like per diem because I didn't have to do, if you sign up at the hospital and you say, okay, I want to work part-time, I think that's 2 shifts a week. And then you are required to do that. So I did per diem because it worked better for my schedule. I loved working in the psychiatric inward unit. That was my favorite job to this day. So I was a mental health technician. Essentially what we would do is take all the nurses' orders, like whatever they wanted us to do. So we take vitals in the morning, do breakfast, we do activities, we would monitor the unit. Like we had something called a Q15. So every 15 minutes, you make sure that the patients are safe. Obviously, you need to document what it is that they are doing. We would do like different activities. That was a 12-hour shift. So I did work initially when I started, I was working 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then I started to do overnight, which I liked overnight in the sense that most people were sleeping. So it wasn't as much work, but it wasn't as hands-on for me. And also I felt like my entire day, I was preparing for work. And then when I got home, I was really tired. So just kind of have to figure out like what works best for your schedule. If you are a parent, maybe you want to do something like that because your kids are sleeping at that time, or, you know, whatever works for you. I also did case management for psychiatric patients. So it was like outpatient case management. Essentially, I would go to their house, or like they had group homes. I would check their medication, make sure they've been scheduled for their therapist to see a dentist, you know, like different things like that. And I think that was a strong part in my application because that's what I did during my like gap years. So that was the, you know, the question mark, like, what did you do in between that time? Also, I realized that psych is absolutely what I want to do. So I was able to gain like my passion from that. I'm still open to like seeing other things, but I'm pretty set on psych. So that was what I did for my clinical experience. It was very hands-on. I really liked it. It was not the most high paying job. I made $15 an hour and it was taxed. So like, don't expect to like jump in and, you know, have like this big salary, but it was more so for the experience than the money. And I love that job. Like I still miss it to this day. I talk about it all the time. I got to meet a lot of different people, as well as like working with the doctors. It's really cool because then you can use them as like, you know, somebody that can write your recommendation letter or something like that. So having a good relationship and like building a rapport with the people in the hospital is really important. So that's what I did during my clinical experience.
Just to be very brief, just to like something that I've kind of learned is for when you're trying to search for clinical experiences, shadowing, volunteering is like dipping your toes into the pool of clinical. You want to, by the time you try to apply, you want to be able to at least learn to swim. Try to find an active role in clinical experience, because yes, volunteering and shadowing are great experiences, but they're very passive experiences. And you want to be, it's very different when you are someone that has a responsibility in the healthcare team, because that's what you're going to be once you're done with medical school. So yes, there are some people who get into medical school with just volunteering and just having some like leadership on a volunteering team, but are they as the most prepared compared to their colleagues? I probably wouldn't think so, because you want to be someone who can really jump into a team and know that you can lead the team, because that's what a physician does. They lead a team, a medical team, and make decisions. And that's partly you have to have an active role and try to find things where you can have a duty, make an effort to help the patient, help the team in some way, in a meaningful way, not just that I'm here, my body is here, I'm here just to get something done. The checklist thing, we're not doing checklists. Find your own checklist, make sure that you are doing something and being active with it.
No, for sure. Just echoing Abraham, I think that's huge. Doing an active role in clinic, and I was able to kind of lump that in with my clinical research thing, where I was going into patients' room alone and taking some of the measurements and learning some of the maneuvers for different tests and kind of taking those and reporting them back to members of the team and like actually communicating, because all of medicine is a team. You have PAs, you have every member of a team is huge, and learning how to talk to all of them matters, because if you don't learn communication, that gets dropped often causes some type of issue, or hey, we missed something. And so if you can learn it, and it allows you to speak to those experiences. I think our school, we really value people who can kind of speak to their clinical experiences. Like if you've had an experience with a patient or something like that, utilize that, especially like in your essays or your experiences section, like talk about those things. Like if you've had an experience that truly shaped your journey, make sure you utilize that.
I know that earlier in the chat, we had a question about like community college versus four-year university credits for like prereqs. I don't know if JR, you could touch upon that really quick as with your like AdCom experience.
Yeah, for sure. So usually when we see credits at different places, it is something that we know that students will go and do, like calculus or like organic chemistry or something at like a place that's not their home institution or whatever. And so we recognize it. Honestly, it doesn't like really affect it that much. Like I took calculus like at a different school from mine, just because I heard it was OD at my school. So I was like, I'm gonna go and do this back home during the summer. And it worked out. So that is fine. It's something we recognize, and we sometimes will like laugh about it, like like they definitely got their calculus or their came in this way or whatever. It doesn't like derail the application. If the majority, if like you are 90% community college, for example, or something, and you do well, just make sure you do well with your grades. The biggest thing is you just want to be able to show that you're academically prepared for medical school with the MCAT. And so if you have a good MCAT score, it doesn't really matter where you took your courses or what you did on your courses. And honestly, people who even have like C's on their like transcript and stuff, like if they have a high MCAT score, all that tells us is this person, it knows the material, they know how to study to succeed, and whatever was going on during that season of life was tough, or they were in the process of learning how to, study kind of thing. So that just goes to say, the courses, it doesn't really matter where you take them. And the MCAT is going to be the best way to kind of show that you are academically prepared for medical school. At least that's how we usually think of it here. I hope that answered the question.
It did. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
So there is a question in the chat that says, so would you advise against applying for a standard medical volunteering experience where volunteers mostly just organize bookshelves and not have any direct patient interaction? Then the next comment says, I think most clinical volunteering doesn't allow patient interaction because of FERPA. I hope I'm saying that right. For me personally, I would not advise against it if that is the only form of clinical experience that you can get. But if you can get something where there is patient interaction, it's going to only benefit you. Like at the end of the day, when you're putting it on your application, just doing something looks great, but having the in-person interaction is so much different than like reading it in a book or, like there's nothing like actually speaking to a person. And then you also get to learn what I think is really important is like bedside manner and just how to approach people before you get into the setting where you actually have to do it yourself. So if you could do something that is more interactive, then absolutely yes, do it. But if there's nothing that you can do that is interactive and you can only do something that's like bookkeeping or like, keeping up with the bookshelves, then you do what you can in that season. But I would suggest if you have the opportunity to do something that is more interactive, to do that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think obviously it's super beneficial for you personally, and a lot of like my favorite experiences from my gap years were when I was interacting with patients. I know it can be difficult to find clinical volunteering experiences that are like more hands-on with patients, and a lot of people will do more like the actual jobs that are clinical, so like medical assistant, EMT, nursing assistant, phlebotomy, like anesthesia tech, things like that, which I know in some states you have to be certified, like it could be a process, but I think the more active your experiences are in a clinical setting, the better. I know a lot of people do scribing, which sometimes isn't the most active, but it's still a good experience and probably more hands-on than if you were just shadowing or doing something in the hospital that's not necessarily with patients. But definitely like being there and volunteering, if it's something that you're going to enjoy, it's always a good thing. So definitely just like keep an open mind if you can't find anything else. But I think someone had also asked a question in the forum about being a student athlete and kind of how that looks to admissions committees, and being able to like reflect on that in your application if anyone has an experience with that and wants to talk about it.
Yeah, so I think both me and JR were student athletes. It's tough. It's a different lifestyle. I would definitely say undergrad as a student athlete, you're super busy. I didn't have time to do a lot of the shadowing and things like that because life as a student athlete, like you're on the go, like all those hours are typically taken by your full-time job, which is being a student and being an athlete. So that's why I kind of did a lot of stuff in my gap that kind of helped with that, and volunteered when I could in undergrad, and took leadership roles that were on campus and things like that. It allowed me those benefits. But I think as a student athlete, I mean, it comes up. I know a lot of places have told, like, it comes up, and it came up in my interviews all the time. Like, how do you feel like being a student athlete has prepared you to take on different things? I think people recognize it's something difficult. It's not something that everybody has. But I don't think it hurts you necessarily. I think it more than anything, it shows that you can balance, especially if you do well as a student athlete. I think it shows that you can balance hard courses and limited time restriction. You kind of have to really be efficient with your time as a student athlete.
Yeah, definitely echo everything you said, Alex. I'm going to try to frame everything from like the AdCom because I think that's helpful. But we usually look at student athletes and people in the military as like, we kind of chunk them in the same kind of boat as these applicants know what hard work is. They know what balance is. They're very rigid in their schedules and things like that. And it is looked on favorably. That being said, we actually had an admission committee meeting like 2 weeks ago. And one of the admission committee members basically made the argument that, this person who is like, because committed themselves to painting is like their hobby kind of thing. We shouldn't be looking at that any less than we would an athlete who committed their 4 years to, playing football or running track or whatever. And so that was I think that's good to know, because if you commit yourself to something specific for a long period of time, athletes, it's like direct, you did this sport for 4 years or whatever. But if you have something, whether it is painting, whether it's singing in the choir, whatever it is, and you commit significant time to that for a long period of time, that's going to look just as favorably, and you're still going to get the benefits of those same characteristics of this person knows how to balance time, this person is dedicated to something, this is what I'm going to talk about with this person on their interview, and you'll still get those same benefits that we historically lump in with the student athlete or the military experience. I think that might be my last answer, unless there is something quick. I am going to have to unfortunately go. If there is anything specific to that I need to answer, Juliana, please let me know. But you guys are awesome, by the way. This is great. I love these kind of just like, this is good. We can do this a lot.
I think we covered everything that was on the form, but go ahead, Rachel, if you have a
Oh, I
question.
was just gonna tell JR that next time I'll wear my UNC hoodie.
Oh, I love it. I love it. All right, guys. Well, you guys keep going. And of course, I'm always here for everybody. You guys reach out to me directly, reach out to everybody directly. This is over the next few months, years, however long this goes, we'll have some strong relationships. So it was nice meeting everybody, seeing some of you guys' faces. Let me make sure the chat, I don't have any. Oh, you guys are awesome. Madison's the real go.
Stop.
Yeah.
Good
Back on
night.
blast. Good night, guys.
Thank
JR,
you.
thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. So Juliana, have we gone through all of the questions? Do we want to open it up now for them to ask questions if they have, or do we have more questions to go through on the responses?
Yeah, I think if anybody here has any specific questions that they wanted to ask, we can open it up.
Hi, everyone. My name is Deja Nicholas. I asked about the community college versus university organic chemistry. So my question, he answered it, but I wanted to tack on a little bit more. I'm sure you all have been through the organic chemistry pain. I am a non-trad student going back to school after 10 years of a break, and I'm in a very rigorous post-bac, but organic chemistry doesn't seem that successful to me. And it's not necessarily a cop-out for me to go to community college. It's if I wait to do it over in my post-bac program, I'd have to wait a year versus being able to retake it next semester. So I just didn't know how admissions committees would look at that. Like, oh, well, she didn't take it at her home school, or I'm looking to do it on the quote unquote easier route. But for me, it's like, I have to keep going with the process. So I'm just jumping on the next train in a sense. So your feedback on that, and like, how does a withdrawal look versus like, if I was to actually fail the class?
I mean, I would definitely say if it's a time constriction thing, definitely take it. Take it when you can, especially like you have time. Like there are places in your application where you can kind of answer like, I know a lot of secondaries like, hey, are there any things you want to add in? If you want to just add that in, hey, I took this course. I just want to make you guys aware. You can also do that in your interview if somebody asks. Sometimes, to be honest, I think people overshare and things don't come up. But honestly, I would definitely say a withdrawal makes 10 times more sense than a fail. I can't speak completely from the same role as JR. I work with our admissions with some help and stuff like that, but I would definitely say I would rather you, most of the time they would rather you withdraw and say like there was things going on and you can kind of talk to those things than have that F, because it also brings down your overall GPA as an applicant. So that's one thing to consider.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of experience with like adcoms and everything like that, but I think I would like definitely like stick to your timeline if that's what's going to work best for you, and like you have an obvious like clear explanation for the like making that choice. So you'd be able to explain that in like an essay or an interview, like Alex said. I think that people like if it's just one class that you took at a community college and it's not like a bunch of classes like JR kind of said, like it's not going to be an immediate red flag to admissions committees. So I definitely think like if that's what's going to work best for you, then I would say go for it.
Thank you.
I just had a question. So for the MCAT, would you say that it's almost absolutely required to take biochem before taking the MCAT? Or is it like self-studyable if I give myself 3 months, like the entire summer to take?
I think it's definitely beneficial to take all the like prereqs before you take the MCAT if you can. If your timeline like means that you would have to take the MCAT before taking biochem or anything, like it's doable because it's not like super in-depth biochem. It's not as in-depth in biochem as it would be in like the actual class, but I think any prereq that you can take before taking the MCAT is gonna help a lot. Honestly, it's just a lot of information, especially if you're seeing things for like the first time on the MCAT. That's like probably gonna be tough. So I would recommend trying to wait if you can, but if you're trying to like apply to medical school before that, then you just like you have to do what you have to do.
Also, you can look at your progress. By the way, I'm Miriam, I'm an MS too. So you can look at your progress by looking at like your practice questions, look at your scores. If you're doing well, then that means you're probably going to do well. But if not, then you should probably take the course first.
Okay, I see. And again, with the MCAT, it's less about the content review and it's more about like, how you can kind of figure out the questions and kind of trying to get what they're trying to ask you, right?
Yeah, I definitely would say that if you can answer questions, that would really help. But the content is like the baseline, like you have to know the content to answer the questions. So like for me, like right now I'm studying for step 1. And so for me, what helps is UWorld and questions. And so then just reading the explanations is something that helps me. But then also having like that baseline of just knowing your content is what's going to help you get the question right. So if you keep getting like the same topics wrong, you have to go back and read that section. So just kind of look at your progress with how you're doing with your questions, like if you're getting them right or wrong.
I see. Thank you.
Just to kind of add to that, I think for the MCAT, like you definitely need a baseline of like foundational knowledge. I think like what I was trying to say with the practice questions and stuff, I think a lot of people get caught up in the content and spend like most of their time just studying the content and not doing practice questions and practice exams. But I think that like maybe it should be like maybe like a 1/3 to 2/3 of content versus practicing, because you want to get as comfortable with taking such a long exam, with staying focused for that long, and with understanding the types of questions that they're asking. So that's why like I think that a lot of people get too caught up on content and don't do enough practice.
We had a question from CJ. Did you guys ever have to deal with self-doubt, imposter syndrome? If so, how did you deal with it? Amazing question. I think anybody who is at this stage of the game, you've dealt with it at some point. You're gonna face it. I mean, we have a whole requirement in our curriculum where we have to go to something where, I mean, we hear and talk to each other as peers, to kind of check in and check on each other. And I mean, we have attendings feel that, right? Like imposter syndrome is real, and especially in the medical field, burnout is real. It's something you feel no matter what, even when you're talking to patients, right? Like you're gonna feel it no matter what. It's one of those things I think I've had to deal with realistically. And I dealt with going into our first exam block. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I'm trying to go home. I don't want to be here anymore. Med school, I don't know what I was thinking. But you start to learn. You can get through it. It is possible. And I think some of the things that have helped me is remember that med school is something I do. It's not who I am at the end of the day. I think that's one of my biggest phrases I've learned in this year. It's like, it's not everything at the end of the day. I also going to a school that's pass fail. I'm not sure if everybody's pass fail, but going to school that's pass fail helps that mentality a lot of times. Because I know, I mean, our dean of students on our orientation day was like, he's just for background, he's an ENT, which is one of the most competitive specialties, and he was like, honestly, I don't care if you get a 66 or 93. To be honest, if you got a 93, I'm worried about you more than I'm worried if you got a 66, because you probably were doing more things that made you more happy if you got the 66, right? So like and I'm like very close friends with our dean of students, and to be honest, he emails me all the time like, are you doing the things you said you'd be doing? Like, I enjoy working out, I enjoy reading, I enjoy talking to my family and friends when I get the opportunity. So like doing those things that you enjoy and find them in your like pre-med years, because I think when you get to med school, if you try and find them not like later, it's gonna be tough sledding. Med school can't be your everything. I know it's tough to see that while you're trying to get in. You want to get in so badly, but it's not. At the end of the day, it's not everything. Med school ends at some point, and you kind of got to have things you do outside of that, or else it will kind of be tough. Like even my classmates, we have rules at times where we don't talk about anything med school related, anything medicine related, and we go live regular lives out in the city.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's so easy to get caught up in med school and everyone's just like grinding all the time, especially in the beginning, because we're used to being in a place where it's like you need to get the best grades possible, you need to get the scores to get in, and you're like, my school's also pass fail, and learning how to study for a pass fail exam is very different than studying when you're trying to ace everything. And that, I think I finally figured it out this time. Like, I had an exam on Monday, but I went to New York this past weekend because I was like, I want to go. I'm going to live my life. It'll be fine. I just have to get a 55. Like, it's okay. So I think like adjusting to that is definitely like, it's a learning curve. But once you figure it out, like someone had asked on the forum, like, what's one of the most surprising things about med school or something you didn't expect? And for me, it's like how much free time I actually have once I realized I can kind of take my foot off the gas a little bit in terms of studying and make time for things that are actually important to me. So I think that helps a lot with like the imposter syndrome and everything. Like everyone is going to feel that at some point in this field. Like everyone is just like up to at such a like high level, it feels like around you. You feel like there's no way I should be here, but you kind of realize looking like as I've talked to attendings and faculty mentors and people who are further along in this journey than I am, I'm like, oh, we all feel like we don't know what we're doing and we shouldn't have this responsibility, but it's okay because everyone feels like that. So I think it's comforting that we're all kind of on the same page and we're all going to have those moments for sure, but definitely staying true to yourself and finding ways to kind of express yourself and be who you are and who you were before med school while in med school is super important.
If I could just add like one more thing to add on to everything you just said, also give yourself grace. And because like there'll be moments when, like you said, you just go to New York and you're writing and stuff, but in the moment in which you're studying, let's say you sit down and you are starting to grind, maybe you're a bit behind or you're okay, there'll be moments when you're going through your Anki cards and it's not okay, or your Notion or whatever you do to study. In that moment, give yourself grace, because you are in a position not many are in, not to make yourself feel better or anything, but then you're in a position that you deserve. And you are at a place where you worked hard. There are so many small accomplishments that are building up and kind of raising you to be in that position. And like everyone said, you're not alone. Everyone goes through it. from nurses. I had an experience where I was a nurse for 2 years, and even the head nurse, because you know how they say nurses know everything, even them, they feel like, okay, this patient is desaturating, okay, but outside they look like they've got everything. So look like that outside also, but most importantly, give yourself grace and talk about it. It's not every time when you give yourself grace that it works. So don't lie to yourself. Also talk to other people about it, because you'll find out that all your classmates are going through it. And just like Alex said, there'll be times when maybe you and your friends decide not to talk about medical school and talk about other things, and just revive yourself. And in times when you talk about medical school, say your struggles, talk about your struggles, because you'll find out that you're not the only one. Everyone in this world is going through the exact same problems that happened before. There's nothing new at this point. So just understand that, give yourself grace, talk about it, look after yourself and your mental health, because when your mental health declines, it's very hard to see that you're actually doing great in school. So check your mental health consistently, check on yourself, wake up and check on yourself. During the day, check on yourself, because you at 5 a.m. and you at 11 p.m., not the same people. You've seen so much throughout that space. So just check in with yourself mentally, and that will help. Because if you're not okay mentally, you can just focus on what that is and look into what you can do about it, and then jump back into the wagon. Because with medical school, there's not enough time. So kind of the more consistent you are with checking with yourself, the easier it becomes. And also be consistent with your studying as well. Not saying be strict and be overproductive and toxic about it, but be consistent with studying, because you'll start to see that you know things. Just like forgot who said they were doing Anki cards and they realized they know things, but they don't know how. I'm pretty sure it's the consistency. So be consistent with your studying, be consistent with checking in yourself, be consistent in checking in with your family and stuff like that, especially if you're far. And yeah, just give yourself grace. That I learned the hard way, but give yourself grace. And I promise you, CJ, it's gonna be okay. Everyone gets through it. Yeah, that's all I wanted to add.
No, grace is huge.
That was good. That was deep. I'm over here like feeling it. Touch. Thanks.
I know
Thank
that
you.
Rachel, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna read Rachel's question.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
I know Rachel had asked about like support systems in med school and things like that. I just want to kind of touch on that a little bit. I think that here and from what I've heard from people at other schools, it seems pretty similar. The group of people in my class, like we're all from all different places, all different backgrounds, all different experiences, but it's the most like supportive, cohesive group of people I've ever been a part of. Like I have been blown away by that. And my friends at different schools have said similar things where there's not a single person in my 200-person class who I wouldn't feel comfortable going to grab coffee with and just like have a conversation with. Like it's truly amazing, like the types of people that you're going to be surrounded by. And everyone is just like on the same page of trying to lift each other up. And I think pass fail really like helps with that, because there's none of that like cutthroat environment whatsoever. Everyone just wants to be there to help each other through this, because we know we're all going to go through some really tough times together in this experience. And I think that has just, it was something I was hoping for, but I was not expecting to this level. And that's just been amazing. And even the administration and faculty and everything too, there are a lot of built-in people who are on your team. Like we have faculty coaches at our school who they're not allowed to evaluate us. They're not allowed to write recommendations, any of that. They're just there to be a resource for you and to check in with you every couple months and things like that. Like most schools that I've ever heard about, like they're gonna have people, once you're in school, everyone is on your team. Everyone wants you to succeed and get to the next step. It reflects well on them. And I would like to think they actually care about me. So like there are a lot of people on your team once you get here. I know it might not feel like that in the pre-med and application process, but it's an amazing support system so far, at least.
Just remember that they chose you to come to that school. They want you here, and you have to make the best resource. Like, it's your time. Like, I was just talking to someone. They were just like, you have to be your own guy. You have to do your things yourself, but you also have a community of people that are going through this yourself. For me, I have, like, mine's a pass fail school, but there's an internal rank. But at the end of the day, it's just like, people know passing medical school is hard. It's very hard. It's like, oh, 70%, that should be fine. There's so much material to go over, which you haven't felt what medical school feels like until you get into it. And so what the community, having people around you that are good, not toxic, and you can smell it from a mile away. I think during my orientation week, they will say, gunners are gonna gun. Like, you will just have them, and you're just gonna have to deal with it. And yeah, so just finding a good community, finding people that you can rely on, and just be like, all right. And but also to touch to Alex, because I will have to head, because I have a quiz tomorrow for my neuro block. For those who don't know, neuro block is no bueno. There's a lot of information, but what I will say about Alex's point, yeah, find what you want to do. Yeah, you won't have time to really build skill sets, but you want to find the balance. It's like, yeah, are you working out? Are you reading? Are you time with family? I am actually progressing with my music career. Like, I have a song that I'm going to be like, I've been still going to sessions, recording music to hopefully release an album while being in medical school. And it's just to show, like, there's a lot of people out there in medical school, your pre-med friends, that will just only be doctors. And there's more to life than just being a doctor. Have fun. Life is great, and you need to make sure you experience it. Because yes, studying is not the most fun time. But you have to make the best of the time that you have. So with that, I'll be heading out. So anyone who wants to reach out to me, I'm on the Slack. I love working with anyone, and yeah, I take very much pride. And if you have a question, I will try to get to you as soon as possible, or resources. And then yeah, the team, they're the best team I could ask for too. Juliana, Alex, and Amoy, like, we all great resources. So please feel free to reach out. The Slack is there. And then yeah, especially the man, the myth, the legend. He didn't like that, but yes, JR is also a great resource. And I hopefully, please, one thing I see with pre-meds that I mentor is they don't reach back. And you have this really great group of people, 50, 60 medical students just at the palm of your hand that will answer you. Like, I think there's like people that ask questions, it's like, there's like 8 people who've already answered your question in very different ways, but they all add to it. So please, whoever's still on the Slack, whoever's here and thinking about it, join in, because you make sure you use any resource, use the time, the resources that you can to make yourself a better applicant and make yourself have a greater network and support system around you. So with that, everyone have a good rest of your night. I'm gonna hop off so I can study for my quiz, but it was great. It was nice meeting with you, meeting with everyone tonight.
Thanks, Abraham.
Thank you. Okay,
But
so I
yeah.
just, okay, go ahead.
Oh,
You got it, Alex.
I was
Go.
I was just gonna say, Rachel, know that we are also here for you. We want to see you guys succeed. Like this, the whole point of this community, it is a community. So we are here for every single one of you. Trust me. I don't care. Like, I may not always answer like right away just because my phone goes on do not disturb during some study times and my phone stays away from me because I'm very bad at, if my phone's in reach, I will be on it. But we are here for you. We want to see you guys succeed. And I mean that wholeheartedly. Like, our goal is for you guys to get where you guys want in your career. So like, I know I go to school far away from my support system. And at times it's tough, right? Like, I don't have full access to them, and sometimes the time zones just don't match up, and I don't speak to anybody for a day or two, and they just send a quick text like, "Hey, are you alive?" It happens. It's med school. You don't always talk to people. My significant other doesn't love the fact that we're not in the same state, and that we don't get to talk all the time. But again, it's a real reality, and I will say, like, we are here for you guys. Like, I truly mean that, especially as the curriculum team. We're trying to put events on that you guys care about. Juliana is trying to make sure that she tailors things to what you guys want to hear. So that's all I had to say.
Well, thanks, guys. When I sent my question, I don't know if JR was the only one that has kids, but I'm a single mom of 4 boys. I do it by myself. My mom lives 10 hours away. So just having this, even though, I don't really know you guys. I mean, I know JR through YouTube, but that's about it. But yeah, just the support is nice because, it's hard when it's like, okay, I have nobody, but then I have somebody. So, thank you.
Yeah, it's honestly like major props to you for doing this with 4 kids. Like I can't even imagine. I know how hard it was trying to figure this whole process out, even just on my own. So I feel very strongly about helping people through this and trying to clarify things a little bit and make it a little less convoluted and just like be able to be with people on this journey, because I know it was so hard to not have anyone, it felt like anyone who understood what I was going through or who had done it before who could help me. So please, like everyone has said, like please feel free to reach out. I love getting to do this. When I was going through this, I was like, I can't wait to be on the other side and try to give back to people the way that JR and his team had helped me last year. So I feel I'm very passionate about this, and I want to be a resource for you guys, and I'm excited that we're getting this off the ground so we can do more that's going to be beneficial for you. So
Thank you, Julia. I think there was one question that we had missed from G asking like studying efficiently and having time off and, not being stressed out. I think that's a huge part. So I can speak to my experience about studying. What I do is I will set a schedule for myself. So it doesn't have to be the same day of the week or the same time of the day, but I always try to plan my days the night before and then my weeks the week before. So for example, on Sunday, I will plan Monday through Friday. I don't really plan the weekend because I'm like, okay, I'll figure it out. It's kind of been working for me. But on Sunday nights, I'll plan Monday through Friday as best as I can. I try to plan hour to hour. It doesn't always work that way. I do have class from 8 to 5. So I'm pretty much on campus Monday through Friday or Monday through Thursday, 8 to 5. And then on Friday, I get out at 3. So I'll plan hour to hour when I'm not on campus, and that's for the week. So I'll do that on Sundays, Monday through Friday. And then the night before the day, so like, let's say Monday, I'll plan what Tuesday will look like. Tuesday, I'll plan what Wednesday will look like. So I know during the week, like I have, let's say, for example, this Friday coming up, I have not tomorrow, not in 2 days, but next Friday coming up, I have an anatomy quiz. And it's usually like 50 questions. It might be like 4 lectures. So I'll break those lectures down. So Tuesday, I'll go over lecture 1. Wednesday, I'll go over lecture 2. Thursday, I'll go over lecture 3. Friday, I'll go over lecture 4. And then the weekend, it'll give me time for like anything in between that I might have missed throughout those lectures. And then I can sit for my exam. So I'll break it up like that. Usually I'll write stuff down that I've already done and completed. If I feel really strong in a subject or a topic, I won't spend as much time as something that, needs more time. So like if I'm going through lecture 2 and let's say, for example, like it's related to abdomen and I'm like, okay, I feel strong in that for anatomy, but I need to focus more on upper limb or lower limb. Like I'll give more time to that. But also scheduling in activities, like scheduling in stuff that I want to do, as well as like hanging out with my friends. Like I'll invite them to different things so that we're all looking forward to it. So we know like, okay, Saturday night, we're going to go out, we're gonna have karaoke night, whatever. I'll try to do that. Also, Alex had mentioned Pomodoro. That is really, really amazing. So for anybody that doesn't know what it is, you pretty much set a time limit. What I do is 45 and 15. So 45 minutes studying, 15 minutes break. And I will set myself with like 4 or 5 Pomodoro sessions in evening, and I'll just check the box off once my alarm goes off. Once the alarm goes off, close the iPad, close the computer, walk away from it, take a walk, get a snack, like don't continue. have your 15 minutes and then get back to it for 45 minutes. That's kind of how I do it. Some people do 50 minutes, 10 minutes, some people do an hour, just whatever works for you. And the phone, put the phone away. Like if you need your phone to be next to you to feel comfortable, I understand, but at least put it on do not disturb so it doesn't like light up or you don't get the notification and feel the immediate need to check it, because that's normal. We all do that. But out of 40 minutes, like you need to be able to not touch your phone for 40 minutes. Like that's a non-negotiable. So the phone has to go away. And that's my efficient studying tips.
Yeah, and I'm slightly different. I will say what helps me is schedule what's required in your study schedule to be efficient, and then go in. I put in my extracurriculars after that just because it gives me happiness. And then put in my actual like studying time and try and like track where I need to be with what lectures. And I use past trackers to kind of help me like because remember, most material you probably need to take a few passes at before you actually are able to actually retain a lot of the information. And I use Pomodoros as my favorite kind of technique and I use this app that basically like logs my computer, like it switches it to a whole different screen and kind of forces me to like, all right, now I'm on break. I'm about to go either look at my phone, get up, maybe I'll watch like part of a podcast or something like that. Also, I watch everything at like 1.5 to 2 times speed. And I don't go to lecture in person, which it's just not required for us. And for my time wise, I used to go all the time in undergrad, but it's just something that the luxury of med school, I've kind of learned just for efficiency. I don't really go to lecture in person, and I kind of use that, and then we'll email if I have questions, or maybe I'll go in person if I have a question, stuff like that. But my only like required things are the things I go in person to.
Yeah, I think for me, in terms of efficiency, I was not efficient at all in undergrad in terms of studying. I wish that I had kind of learned some of the techniques that I know now back then, because I probably would have had a lot more time to get things done. But I think for me, the biggest thing is that in undergrad, I used to rewrite all my notes to study, and that is just so time consuming and very passive. And now like I'm getting better, but I still have to kind of actively force myself to not write anything down while I'm doing Anki. I'm like, you just have to think about it in your head and actually try to recall something and not write it out. So for me, like just adjusting to, because it's just such high volume learning in med school. Like you would never get anything done if you tried to write everything down a million times. So that's been an adjustment. And I think that using things like Anki that are more active and more efficient has definitely helped me be more efficient in med school and have more free time. So it's you have to try some different things out and see what works for you. But I definitely wish that I had known about Anki and these different types of study methods in undergrad.
So I also just want to add, I'm a bit of everyone here, but what I've learned is before you do anything in terms of planning and stuff like that, maybe set the time you will sleep. So for me, I'm very far away from my family. I am 6 hours away. So that means I talk to them like at 3 a.m. or something like that. But I have to schedule that in. I have to schedule classes in. I have to schedule studying in and actually living a life. So I factor in the sleep first. So 6 hours to 7 and snooze it to 8. But that's also factored in just in case. And then factor in like what you do, Alex, what's important of that day, what's the top 3 things that you need to do. So that's very nice when you do it when you just woken up. I don't know if people wake up and drink coffee or what, but when you wake up and you sit, schedule those first 3 things. Also have like a backbone of a schedule that you don't really have to stick to, but at least to just know that I will wake up, I will sit and plan, I'll go to class. Hopefully I'll cover this subject or that subject, factor in like a study timetable kind of thing. That's not something that you will follow every day, but it's just a backbone so that when you plan your day, you don't start from scratch every time. So in days where, like you said, you have a lot of time in medical school sometimes. So there'll be days where you can follow that, where you're like, okay, today I know I will be doing renal or something, but if not, then that's the day in which you take that out and you schedule and factor in what you can do, your top 3 things that you can do. And also, a lot of people, including myself, have developed these study techniques and stuff in pre-med. So you will hear a lot of advices and stuff, but start with one thing in practice. So for example, Pomodoro, perfect that, get the 50 minutes in, maybe 25 and then to 50 and then to, don't take everything in and try to do it now because you will not perfect it now. It all takes discipline. So train your discipline. So for example, I say scheduling your sleep in and try to sleep at a consistent time or try to wake up at a consistent time. Then when you master that, try to sleep and wake up at a consistent time. When you're studying, try Pomodoro, see your limits. And when you reach a 25, make sure you don't go 17, 16. Try to elevate yourself. Okay, 26 minutes next week, 29 minutes next week. And if you're starting with Pomodoro, try to use resources for it. Don't just use a timer. Maybe watch a study with me video. I know people have those that help me to train myself so that I can actually just put a timer or have the app that Alex is talking about where you just, when it's your break, it switches off your screen. I don't know if I got you correctly, but it forces that discipline in you so that you train yourself. So every advice that you get, you're at a point where you are trying to get that discipline and you hear a lot of people say, I wish I knew this pre-med. If you are in that state, go about it the productive way. Don't overwhelm yourself with having to get it right, but practice to get it right so that when you get to med school, you have it and you got it and you are consistent, but train that discipline. But yeah, do the whole planning of your day and the Pomodoro thing and the question banks. It's usually very nice to do it when you wake up. I don't know how it's going to be for other people, but like you wake up, you do the question banks and stuff, and then you go to class. Then you come back, and then how coming back to class will look like can be a bit inconsistent, but you can factor in the three most important things that you need to do when you come back. But in the morning, you can have a consistent thing of, okay, I do 1 hour, I wake up at 3 or 4, do 1 hour of Anki, do 1 hour of Ubank or Midspora or whatever you use, and look at a PPT or slides for class. That can be consistent. What you do coming back, you can lean on from the skeleton type of timetable I was talking about, or you just plan your day as your day goes. And then that creates discipline. And then by the time you get to med school, sorry, Juliana, but you won't be like Juliana and saying, I wish I knew this in pre-med. You won't be me and saying, I wish I knew that in pre-med. You can start training your discipline now and put your phone away. Even if you are disciplined, even if you've done this for 7, 8 years, when that ping comes in, if you're having relationship problems, if you're having friendship problems, that phone will ping. Put your phone away, give it to someone else. Put it away from you, because it will not help you out. It will distract you at some point. You will lose the ball at some point. So put your phone away. That's the first discipline thing that you need to learn. But yeah, other than that, take all the advice in and try to practice and see what works for you. This is the time to get it. Then by the time you're in med school, you know what's up, you know what to do, you know how to, So yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So let's see, do we have any more questions? Doesn't look like it. Anybody have any questions, feedback, comments, anything you want to share that maybe we didn't touch on or that you'd like us to touch on in the future?
I'm going to drop my phone number in the chat if anybody wants to get a hold of me. That's probably the easiest way. If I don't respond via Slack, so feel free to reach out.
Yeah, I'll do the same. And yeah, I'll answer as quickly as I can.
All right, guys, since you're forcing me to do it, no, I'm just kidding.
I was about to say, I didn't want to apply the pressure to everybody.
No, it's fine. I'll add my number. You guys can reach out to me via Slack or WhatsApp, iMessage if you have it. No green boxes, please. But either way, I'm happy to take any questions that you guys have. And this is kind of just to figure out more so like JR said about if you resonate with somebody, like, you know, if you want a specific mentor, you can reach out to any one of us. It doesn't have to be the people that you saw this evening, but if there are people that you saw this evening that resonated with you and, you know, you want like some personal mentorship, feel free to reach out to us. We are here for you guys. This program is about you guys. So all of the feedbacks, all of the questions that you're asking, it really helps us to tailor what you guys need. Also, this is a huge resource that I think so far, none of us have said that we have had that resource in pre-med. I know I didn't personally have it myself. So it's really nice to be a part of it, but take advantage of it because this is essentially a free resource that you have people that are experiencing this at your fingertips. So if you have a question, ask it. And also we are learning from each other. So everybody here can benefit from hearing everybody else's experience. We are coming to a close, so I'll let Juliana conclude if there's anything else.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for coming today. We're gonna hopefully have many more events in the future. They'll probably be a little more specific. So we'll have like an MCAT Q&A type thing, maybe some different like student panels with some of the mentors so you can hear some different perspectives. So it won't always just be us, but bear with us as we kind of figure things out and work things out. But this was an awesome first event and thank you guys so much for coming and having such great questions.